Welcome to Heroes That Help, brought to you by the Missouri Department of Mental Health through the Disaster Response State Grant, funded by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. Heroes That Help, conversations with heroes who respond to disasters, natural and man-made, that wreak havoc every year in Missouri. I'm Tom Steever. The impact of natural disasters goes beyond damage and physical injury. There is mental suffering among those recovering from disaster-related trauma. This compassionate caution from the Missouri Department of Mental Health. Some of the information we discuss in this visual radio series may be distressing or traumatizing for some people. If you need help, we encourage you to reach out to supportive people. There is help available through behavioral health services, including treatment for mental illness and substance use disorders. Today we're talking with Jeana Thomas with the Missouri Department of Commerce and Insurance. Jeana, welcome.
Thanks. Appreciate you having me.
And let's start with what the department is and what its role is.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm proud to say that the consumer service team for the Missouri Department of Commerce and Insurance takes charge after any type of a disaster for relief and recovery. We serve ready pre-disaster and post-disaster. We man a toll-free hotline for any Missouri consumer that may be affected by an insurance issue of any type. We want to be there to answer questions about insurance companies, insurance claims, policies, a wide variety of issues. We also want to stand ready to educate Missouri consumers on any of their insurance needs. Post-disaster, we participate with many state agencies and charitable organizations that get together for multi-agency resource centers. And at those resource centers, we provide one-on-one basic counseling for any insurance-related needs that may arise.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's talk about the role specifically in a disaster situation. What does it do in that case?
Well, after a disaster, consumers really don't know where to start with an insurance claim. And so with these multi-agency resource centers, we set up a one-stop shop with our state government partners, as well as our non-governmental partners, charitable organizations that come in and want to provide the community that's been affected with a wide variety of services. What our department's role in that is to guide folks through their insurance-related issues. Insurance is the initial step for really helping a community start the recovery process. It's the immediate funds that come in after a disaster. So we want to help guide and educate consumers on how to make that process easier for them.
Okay, so what state agencies do you work with in the event of a disaster?
Absolutely. There's a long list of state agencies. I'm sure I'm going to forget some. We work very commonly with the Department of Mental Health, the Attorney General's Office, Health and Senior Services, SEMA. We work with many charitable organizations as well, and there's a lengthy list of those. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any of the state agencies that provide basic human services for individuals.
Yeah. Talk about your personal role in all of this. What do you do on a personal basis, especially where disaster response is concerned?
Well, I lead the consumer service team. My official title is Consumer Service Manager. And so I have the privilege of working with a wide variety of insurance specialists over all the lines of insurance: auto, home, life, health. And we guide consumers on a daily basis through incoming phone calls and complaints that they may have through their insurance needs. And after a disaster, my team stands ready to go to these multi-agency resource centers and provide one-on-one assistance to consumers post-disaster. We want to do things like provide an insurance company contact information or help them navigate a policy or how to process a claim. If need be, worst comes to worst, we have a complaint process that consumers can go through should they be struggling with a claim process with their insurance company. But I feel like the number one approach for our department is really consumer education. We want to get information to people before a loss so it can make their experience after a loss much smoother.
Yeah. A disaster is, of course, a very stressful time for survivors, of course, but also for insurers. So what specific anecdotes could you share with us as far as what you have seen personally in recovery from disasters?
Yeah. Well, anybody that works in disaster response and recovery has probably personally experienced a traumatic event or helped someone who has been through a pretty severe trauma. I remember many, many years ago at one of the flood marks, and again, I'll refer to marks, they're the multi-agency resource centers. An individual came into a mark for assistance, and he wasn't following the normal flow of the mark, going from table to table seeking assistance. He ended up coming across the room and sitting down in a chair in front of my table, and he did not do so graceful. He was very much in pain. He very much had been working in the floodwaters and did not seem to be in a good mental state. He was having a very hard time communicating what it was he was really there for. That was fairly traumatic for me because as a young individual, this was many years ago when I started with the department, I was just there to talk insurance. And I wasn't expecting somebody in this much of a crisis to sit down in front of me. The good part about where I was at this multi-agency resource center was I was quickly able to reach out to my partners. And within minutes, we were able to move him to a comfortable location. We had a hot plate of food in front of him. We had recently found out that he had been discharged from a hospital earlier that day from a very major surgery. And he went home to his home by the river to find basically a total loss. And he was devastated. And so his neighbor had let him know about the mark. He came our way, but he really didn't know what to ask for. He didn't know what help he needed. So we moved him to the comfortable location, gave him a plate of food, and luckily I was able to reach out to one of our partners at the Department of Mental Health they had a counselor on site, and they were able to sit with him and talk with him and get him to a state where he was able to communicate what his needs were and what he could expect from the mark that we were all attending. Before he left, I was able to talk with him about his insurance needs. Unfortunately, there wasn't a whole lot I could do to help him, but we were able to get him a plan of attack and some information moving forward, to which he seemed fairly grateful. But that's not even the feel-good part of the story. The best part of the story is a couple days later, we were further down the road in a neighboring community, also doing another mark for the flood. He was not able to get to all the services that day, so he came back to the neighboring community's mark. And he came in and immediately found me and clobbered me with a hug of gratitude. And it was a wonderful experience. And he just thanked me for treating him like a human being. But it wasn't just me. I could not have helped him the way that we were able to that day without my partners that were there to help collaborate in this effort. My friends at the Department of Mental Health and some of the other organizations that were there to provide him immediate basic human service needs. It was vital to his experience, and I really think it made an impact on his life.
Of course it did. You obviously cannot leave all of this at work. So how do you deal with instances, heart-wrenching instances like this?
Well, we have a great team. I have a great team of individuals that I work with at the Department of Insurance, but not just that team. It's really our other state agencies and the other organizations we work with. Anyone that works in disasters, we have to rely on each other. We can share our stories. We can be there to support each other and not let each other go through it alone. The other thing is I take gratification in helping one person well at a time. And then I move on to the next person. And I let that fuel me in assisting each and every consumer. Sometimes that's challenging, though, to find the gratitude in the work, and your coworkers can help. But then when it's too tough, we have to rely on our partners at the Department of Mental Health to help us through to some of those crisis moments.
You're with a state agency that obviously has to work under regulations because of its connection with state auspices. But what is your personal take on just the importance of showing human compassion, of showing compassion to a survivor of a disaster?
Well, the first thing that you need to do is let people know they're in a safe space, and establish trust. If you can't let them know that they're safe and that you're someone that's trustworthy in a matter of moments, basic moments, you're probably not going to get a whole lot of information across to them. So I think that's really the key in dealing with anybody after a crisis or someone that's in emotional distress.
Mm-hmm. Very good. So in what instances, for instance, you brought out this one anecdote that you
mm-hmm.
had with a survivor that was going through a particularly hard time.
Mm-hmm.
In what instance might you offer or suggest, recommend to a client of yours that they seek professional help?
Well, anytime they've gone through a trauma or crisis, I think it's important to share with the individual, not to hold in their feelings. And that's one of the things that the Department of Mental Health has helped us through various trainings that we've participated in of theirs. And I think sometimes you don't even have to recommend that they seek out the assistance. When we are at these multi-agency resource centers, we're actually able to go and get someone, a counselor that may be on site, or a professional that works at the Department of Mental Health, and just bring them over and have them start in the conversation with us. And that's what was so successful for me in handling this one situation, was that he didn't know to ask for that kind of help or even verbalize that he may need it. But we knew that we needed to rally around him and pull those people in. So sometimes if you can't get through to the individual, you need to do it for them and bring somebody else in.
Call in your connections.
Absolutely. The networking and the collaboration that we do here in the state of Missouri between our state agencies and our volunteer organizations is invaluable to the success of us going into a community and having a very quick turnaround on recovery and making that community more resilient.
Let's talk specifically about the 2019 tornado.
Mm-hmm.
You had mentioned, of course, the gentleman you were referring to was in a disaster several years ago.
Right,
Let's just go back a few years to that tornado.
Mm-hmm.
How did that affect your department and your clientele?
Well, interestingly enough, it took a harder effect on our staff simply because it was local. These were our own homes. It was our own community that was affected. And so we kind of went into our normal business robot mode because we know what to do because we've done it so many times. And we know and already have these relationships established on how to help. We rely on each other first and foremost. We can be there to support each other. And when we forget what the next step is or where the next direction is that we need to take, we ask each other, and we already have things in place to help us. And some of the services that the Department of Mental Health and other state agencies provide help guide us through those hard times.
Yeah. How important is that? You said you have each other's backs. You support each other.
Yeah.
How important is that?
It's very important. We're a work family, and we have a great team, and everyone that is in disaster relief and recovery is there to help. So knowing that the person to your right and to your left is there to help with you makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, very good. Is there anything I left out that you'd like to add to this?
One thing that I have found helpful for our staff, after I started going to these marks, I've been with the department for many, many years. Someone at the Department of Mental Health offered a training to us dealing with the psychological impact of handling people through crisis and through trauma. They have trainings available, and since I've managed the team of insurance professionals, I have integrated into that team some of these trainings so that when we do help other people, we're educated ourselves on how to approach individuals and how to handle the trauma ourselves. So I encourage anybody out there that is involved with disaster recovery or response to reach out to your partners and look at some of those psychological and mental health trainings, because you never know what you might take from it yourself and then what you're in turn going to be able to offer to a victim.
Exactly. Thank you, Jeana Thomas with the Missouri Department of Commerce and Insurance. Jeana Thomas is one of the important heroes that help when disaster strikes. Heroes That Help is brought to you by the Missouri Department of Mental Health through the Disaster Response State Grant funded by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. Please, if you need help, reach out to supportive people from the Missouri Behavioral Health Services or another mental health professional. Join us again when we'll talk to another of our Heroes That Help. Remember, Recovery is possible. I'm Tom Steever.